Jackson with us today. She founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation. And welcome, Kayla. So good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to share my story and a little bit about our mission.
First of all, tell us, what is ON?
So occipital neuralgia is a chronic nerve pain condition that is caused by inflammation or irritation to the occipital nerve. So the occipital nerves, they lie in the back of the head. They're originating in the back, and they travel almost in like a C shape all the way to the forehead region. So oftentimes ON, or occipital neuralgia, is caused by a concussion, whiplash injury. And so in my case, I actually have occipital neuralgia. So going back about 8 years now, I was playing softball, and my teammate and I, we were both going for the same pop-up ball, and we ended up colliding, and I ended up with a concussion, whiplash, and neck sprain injury. And I ended up seeing multiple doctors pretty quickly just to see, because I was having really bad head pain. And they all told me that I would be good to go in 3 days. Very quickly, those 3 days turned into 3 weeks, and then 3 months, and here I am 8 years later. I'm still dealing with the pain. Unfortunately, I was misdiagnosed for a large portion of my journey. I was told that I was dealing with migraine or post-concussion syndrome. So what's difficult about occipital neuralgia is that many of the symptoms overlap those of migraine or those of post-concussion syndrome, because it is chronic head pain. So what differentiates occipital neuralgia from, let's say, migraine is you can actually feel the pain. It often travels from the back of your head and, again, straight to the front of the head. Almost feels like lightning bolts, like zaps.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not fun.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and then, again, a lot of the symptoms overlap because we'll get...
Let's take a look at the graphic you sent us to
Sure.
and talk about the symptoms. Go ahead.
Definitely. So pain radiating through the arms, that's huge. Scalp numbness. So when you go to brush your hair, you'll actually feel like your scalp almost gets numb. Even laying down on a pillow, that could cause a lot of pain.
It sounds hard to deal with and experience and bear all this pain, and you don't know the source of it.
Absolutely. I think one of the hardest things was because it's considered an invisible condition. So I don't have like a bandage wrap around, or I'm not in crutches, so people don't physically see that I'm in pain. So that's definitely been a struggle of mine, especially being so young. And again, this stems oftentimes from concussions. And I was 13 years old at the time, and people around me, they would get concussions, and then they would be good to go. They would be playing their sports again within a few days. Meanwhile, I had this lingering pain that would not go away. I had to resort to home instruction, so I was homeschooled throughout middle and high school, and then even my first year of college, just because the pain was so debilitating.
Kayla will be graduating in December with a degree in health science. She's seeking positions in medical research and medical affairs. And coming up at 9, we'll talk definitions and diagnosis of ON. We're on Spotlight, New Jersey with Kayla Smock of Jackson, who founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation. In our last segment, we were talking about the symptoms and how they can be mixed up with migraines. You want to talk more about the definition and the diagnosis?
Absolutely. So I just wanted to reiterate, occipital neuralgia is a chronic nerve pain condition that is caused by inflammation or irritations to the occipital nerves, which are the nerves that lie in the back of the head. So oftentimes ON is misdiagnosed as migraine, and I just want to stress that the treatments for both ON versus migraine are very different. So migraine is caused by a chemical imbalance, whereas occipital neuralgia is caused by a mechanical compression of the nerves. So again, the treatments are very different, and in my personal journey for many years, I was misdiagnosed with having migraine. So it wasn't until about 1.5 years into my journey, I was actually seeing a local sports medicine doctor for my neck pain, because I was dealing with severe neck pain, and he actually told me that I was dealing with occipital neuralgia. And he only knew this because he has a cousin who was a neurologist, and he told him some of the symptoms to look for.
So thank God you went to him.
Oh my goodness, I know. Yes. So it's difficult to diagnose occipital neuralgia because nerve damage doesn't show up on imaging. So all of the MRIs, all the CAT scans, everything that I was getting, they were all coming back completely normal. And that's why it was believed that I had just typical migraine or post-concussion syndrome, since I had a concussion. Meanwhile, my doctor actually, he applied pressure to the back of my head, where the occipital nerves are, and I almost jumped out of my chair because it was so painful.
Oh.
And it was from there that he knew that the occipital nerves were actually involved.
And he started you on the treatment regimen that you needed.
So that was what was so frustrating. He told me, he's like, okay, you have occipital neuralgia. And we were like, okay, so what's our next step? And he was still telling me that I just needed to continue with physical therapy, with acupuncture, with massage therapy, and with more migraine medications. So that was 1.5 years into my journey. It wasn't until about 3 years into my journey that I knew the proper treatments for occipital neuralgia. And what actually helped me the most were the surgeries that I had. So my first surgery was occipital nerve decompression surgery. So they went in through the back of my head and they just decompressed the area. They released all the scar tissue, all the fascia that had built up throughout the years. And then another surgery that I had was an occipital neurostimulator. Mm-hmm. So I have a battery pack implanted in my chest, and I have wires that run through my head. And the goal of it is to prevent the pain signals from actually reaching my brain. So
is all of that still within your body now?
Yes. Yes.
What is that like, having to carry that around? Or do you feel it? Or
I've gotten used to it, actually. Yeah, so it's the battery pack is right here in my chest, and then I have 2 wires. They run through the back of my head, and then 2 that run right here to my forehead area. The reason that they did both areas of my head is because that's where I had the most pain. So I had a lot of pain in the back of my head, and then again, a lot of the pain in the front of my head.
And coming up next at noon, Kayla explains how her foundation got off the ground. I am talking with Kayla Smock of Jackson, who founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation. We want to talk about how this whole thing got started and launched.
Absolutely. So I created the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation about 3 years ago now. We actually just celebrated our 3-year anniversary on April 16th.
Congratulations.
So exciting. Thank you. So there's 3 aspects to our mission. The first being providing support to those dealing with occipital neuralgia, as well as to their caregivers. The second part of our mission is to educate the public on occipital neuralgia. And then the third part of our mission is to foster research into the causes and treatments of ON. I developed the foundation just because I saw such a need, primarily in the medical community, but in my own personal life. And just going off of like my own diagnosis, it took me several years just to understand what I was dealing with and the pain that I was dealing with. And
you knew you had to do something more.
I
Once
knew
you figured out what was happening with you.
Exactly.
You wanted to reach out and help others.
Exactly. I knew I needed to turn my pain into purpose.
I like that.
Thank you.
I knew that's something you were reaching for, pain into purpose.
Pain into purpose, yes. And, you know, one of the things I had resorted to Facebook because I wanted to find support groups because it was an extremely isolating time period of my life. And I couldn't understand why I was in so much pain. And the doctors, they couldn't tell me why either. So I found these support groups on Facebook and several people in the groups, they were posting very depressing things. They weren't searching for relief anymore. They had kind of like just...
They'd given up?
They had given up with their pain.
Kayla.
So I needed to create something where it was positive, a positive group. So I ended up resorting to my own social media accounts. And so that's the first aspect of our mission, would be to provide support. So we have accounts through Facebook and Instagram, and we actually feature Warrior of the Weeks.
I love that.
Yeah, so we highlight someone's journey with occipital neuralgia, and we highlight different symptoms, different treatments that they've tried. And we always close out every Warrior of the Week with a message of advice. And by doing so, we've created an environment of just hope and positivity for anyone dealing with this condition. You've
featured over 70 stories so far, you said?
Yes, just in about three and a half years, we've featured over 70 stories. We featured stories from all over the world at this point. It's been incredible.
How does it make you feel when you get these messages? Do you cry? Are you excited? Are you exuberant? Happy?
Yeah.
All these emotions?
All of the above. I mean, it's amazing that people are finding my organization, and I'm incredibly sorry that anyone is dealing with this diagnosis, but at the same time, I'm so glad that they have found an outlet for support and just to regain that hope again. Yeah.
Tomorrow at 6 a.m., we'll chat about the events that Kayla holds to help people with ON. We are talking with Kayla Smock of Jackson, who founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation 3 years ago. We left talking about one of the activities she provides for people who come to your foundation, the Warrior of the Week. You also have 2 other events we need to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done several t-shirt fundraisers in the past, and we encourage, the ribbon color for occipital neuralgia is teal. So
Which you are wearing today.
Which ended up being perfect, yes. So we've done different t-shirt fundraisers, and we encourage our viewers and our followers to wear their t-shirts, and throughout the year, of course, just to encourage that conversation, just so when they're in public, people come up to them and they ask, what is occipital neuralgia? And this helps us to spread the word. And again, the t-shirt fundraisers, they've reached people internationally. We've had people in the UK, Australia, Canada, and of course the United States purchase these t-shirts. And then for Occipital Neuralgia Awareness Day, which is October 26th of every year, everyone wears their t-shirts and they send in photos. And then even for we call them our ONFversaries. So our anniversary since our incorporation, we have everyone wear their t-shirts again and just send in their photos. It's really exciting. Are
you amazed at the worldwide reaction you were getting?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's incredible, our reach at this point. And it's really nice because we have people from all over the world at this point. So I have had the opportunity to connect people, let's say 2 people in the same city in Australia, and I'm able to connect both of them, and they're able to communicate about different doctors that they've seen, who has helped them, who hasn't helped them. Something else that's been huge is insurance. And so I'm, of course, familiar with insurance in the United States, but the insurance elsewhere is very confusing. So I do have people in different countries, and they help communicate with me about insurance battles that they might face with their occipital neuralgia. And then again, they communicate with other people in their country. And yeah, it's a cycle, but everyone's connecting. It's been incredible.
And that whole thing with insurance coverage is a big deal for everybody. So they share notes on what is and isn't, the challenges they've faced in dealing with it.
Absolutely. Yes. So since occipital neuralgia, it doesn't show up on imaging, as I explained earlier. So there's not necessarily a concrete way to diagnose occipital neuralgia. So many of our treatments are deemed experimental. So the surgeries that I've had, they've all been deemed experimental. And then even something that I face being a pediatric dealing with occipital neuralgia is, for example, Botox. It's recommended for people with ON. However, since I was under the age of 18, insurance, they were not interested in covering my treatment. So insurance remains an ongoing battle. So that's another part of our mission, is to work with insurance companies just to try to get more treatments approved, because something that we forget when people deal with occipital neuralgia, oftentimes the pain is so debilitating that people aren't able to go into work. They aren't able to secure a job, so they have no means of financial income, and then now they're expected to pay out of pocket for all these different treatments just to find relief.
Kayla is also trying to help with the unmet needs of ON patients. That's in our next conversation coming up at 9. We're back with Kayla Smock of Jackson, who founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation. In our last segment, we were talking about the challenges that people face in dealing with insurance companies and trying to get coverage, since this is still considered experimental.
Right.
Now, you've also conducted informal studies with patient advocacy organizations to learn about the unmet needs of the ON community.
Yes. So going back to May of 2021, we teamed up with Patients Rising. They're a patient advocacy organization. And we sent out a survey to our followers just to learn more about the unmet needs in the ON community and where our focus should be. And through the survey, we learned several things. One of the key things that we learned was average diagnosis time. So the average diagnosis time between onset of symptoms versus an accurate diagnosis ended up being almost 4 years.
What?
Almost 4 years, right.
Whoa.
And then we ended up learning that with occipital neuralgia treatment, treatments proved to be most successful within the first 3 to 6 months since symptoms. So there's that disconnect between 3 to 6 months that you'll find the most relief from the treatments versus the average diagnosis time, which we found was to be 4 years. Right.
Now, what was the length of time for you involved with the treatment?
It was a year and a half until I found my diagnosis of occipital neuralgia, but it was an overall 3 years until I even knew about the treatments that were out there for ON.
That had to have been a long stretch of time for you,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with that kind of pain and having no relief.
It was so difficult. And unfortunately, at the time, since I was so young, I had several different doctors. They told me that maybe the pain's just all in your head. Maybe you aren't actually dealing with it. Maybe you're just an anxious teenager, and we need to target your anxiety. And meanwhile, I was in so much pain that I wasn't able to go to school. I wasn't able to function. I was on homebound instruction. I was confined to my bedroom most days. I couldn't leave my room. My teachers were coming over to my house to teach me. So it wasn't all in my head. I had an actual diagnosis. So just the fact that it takes 4 years just to actually get to that diagnosis is extremely frustrating.
What do you want to say to people about being proactive and not letting somebody dismiss you when you know you need help?
Absolutely. I would say to go with your gut, because I was going to so many different physicians, and I think my parents, they were my biggest advocates. They've been amazing throughout this entire journey, and they kept pushing for me to go to different doctors. I've been to 7 different states. I've seen over 40 different physicians in seek of relief. So keep pursuing, and you'll find an answer out there one day. And just don't give up.
And coming up at noon, we'll talk about her virtual 5K race. Kayla Smock of Jackson founded the Occipital Neuralgia Foundation. We've been talking with her this weekend here on Spotlight, New Jersey. One of the things we wanted to get to was your virtual K race.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about that.
Yes, so we ran a virtual 5K. It was during the time of COVID, so that was why it was virtual, but it was incredible. We had people from the UK, Australia, Canada, the United States. Everyone took part. We had t-shirts made up for Outrun ON. That was the name of it. And we stressed, just because it is difficult for many people with ON to actually do physical activity. So it was a run/walk, but we had an incredible response from that. It was really exciting.
You also offer scholarship opportunities.
Yes. So we teamed up with a local high school, and we had high school seniors. They sent in essays that they wrote, and the focus was about concussions and about brain injury, just in general. And we had, the last one that we awarded was to a high school senior. She dealt with a pretty bad concussion, and she actually made it her mission to focus on brain injury research. So she was awarded the most recent scholarship.
You must have been so proud of her.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially for a high school senior to turn something so negative in her life to something so positive by pursuing research. It was great.
How do you feel about the need for more research and awareness of ON?
Absolutely. I think there's a huge need for research. Just going off of the
response you've gotten?
Just the response that we've gotten, and like with clinical trials being done, there's a total of 11 clinical trials being done for occipital neuralgia. Compared to migraine, there's over 1,300 clinical trials being done.
Big difference there.
An incredible difference, yes. And just based on the support and the feedback that we've gotten through our foundation, so many people come to us and they're like, we wish that we found you earlier. And just through, again, as I explained earlier, the 4 years to an accurate diagnosis of occipital neuralgia, there's a huge need for research, especially after concussion injuries.
You speak with a lot of doctors and physicians about this very topic.
Right.
Tell us about that too.
Yeah, so we've teamed up with several different physicians throughout the years, and we'll periodically run interviews with these physicians, and they're all posted on our website at onfsupport.org. But we'll start from the very beginning. We'll go from what is occipital neuralgia. We'll go about how to reach an accurate diagnosis, the treatments that might be successful, that should be tried, and then the most recent one that we did was with Dr. Ivan Duchik of the Washington Nerve Institute. He's a plastic and peripheral nerve surgeon, and we closed that out by talking about insurance battles. Just because, again, since occipital neuralgia, most of the treatments are deemed experimental. So our focus was on insurance battles in that interview.
You can see all of Kayla's segments on News12.com and on my Facebook page.